All right, welcome listeners. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. This is episode 137. The date is June 29th, 2021. Joining me is my good friend, my pal, Brad Nye. How are you, Brad?
Good. Hanging in there.
It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, and, for the listeners, it's 7:12 in the morning. And we jump on usually Tuesday mornings at 6:45 to, start talking. So we've been spending almost the last half an hour just talking about life stuff.
Yeah. It's been, I've been open. We've had a pretty stressful, couple of weeks, and then, going back even to last November when I had the, oh my gosh, I can't even think of what it was, the ear balance thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Holy crap, man. There's been so many things that I've kind of forgotten about some of the things.
It's been absurd.
Right. Yeah. So listeners, if you're the praying type, some prayers for Brad and his family, because it's a tough stretch, man. But like we said earlier, it's got to end sooner or later.
I hope.
Right. I mean, the fact that you've kept it together as well as you have has been, I think, inspiring to me, and we also talked about before jumping on, just the helplessness, sometimes when you see a buddy, I have 3 or 4 friends who are struggling with different health issues, and either them or members of their family. And it sucks because there's really nothing you can do, right? Offer your good thoughts, try to check in once in a while to see if you see how you're doing, try to encourage.
Yeah. I think, and we talk about mental health within the workplace too. And this is one of those things, is a good example where, let's be honest, what's going on at home affects what happens at work, right? Like, I'll be totally honest, I haven't been able to be 100%. Have I gotten my work done? Yeah. But am I distracted because of everything else? How can you not be? You're human.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Yeah, man, for sure. And, and like lots of security people, I think, we get very passionate about our work. And sometimes it blurs the lines between, what's work and what's home. And when you've got sicknesses and things to deal with, and, life issues, it starts to become pretty obvious what's work and what's, what's home and what's life. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think, and having the support of the team and leadership and everything has been just so helpful. And so, we'll get through it and keep going, but it's very weird. It's very different from work, where, like we were talking about, we're in control, right? Not controlling things, but I know what's going on. I have a sense of like there's stability. Even when things are chaotic, I know what's going on. I can handle it. I can't do anything at the home stuff. And that's what's so tough. So it's a very, very different from what I'm used to.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's part of, on the other side of this, seems like those life things, we talked a little bit too about, when I was diagnosed with cancer and just the other life issues, man. In hindsight, I can always look back and see the lessons and appreciate going through it. When you're going through it, it's the worst thing,
Yeah.
Because in hindsight, I have no, like, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody last week, and they were talking about regrets, because I've lived, the ADD. I'm not blaming it on ADD. I'm blaming it on something else. It's 2021, so I ain't taking any credit for it myself. It can't be me. But, I've done some crazy things over my lifetime, and just being here still is kind of a blessing, I guess.
Yeah. So.
All right.
fun. That's our
Yeah.
with Stuart Smalley, the old Saturday Night Live with Al Franken.
Yeah, big time. Well, we've got some stories to cover today. I do appreciate Ryan filling in for the
Yes.
1 week. That and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you and I have that kind of relationship, and you've actually set a good example for me on priorities, because it was the morning. I don't know, maybe it was the night before. I think episode 135 when you texted me. You're like, "Yo, not doing the show. I'm just not."
I can't. It was one of those things where I was like, I can't do it. I'm not here. I'm not functionally able to do it. It wouldn't be right. So, but I appreciate that, we do have that relationship. I feel like I can be honest with you about that. I don't have to fake it.
No, and I want it. Shit, man. When people fake it, then because you can only fake it for so long, and then all of a sudden you hit it, right? You hit the wall, or you do have those mental breakdowns where it's just like,
well,
and then bad things happen, man.
Yeah, I think it was helpful for anybody listening. The Washington Post had a really good article about burnout, and you can look that up. And that came out after that, and I was like, oh yeah, because I always thought of burnout as work. Like, I'm sick of this job. I'm tired of this. I'm done. And that's not the case. I love what I do. Like, even, here's what's crazy. It'll be 5 years next month. And I still love every day. But reading it, it's like, oh, prolonged exposure to, what is it? I don't know, it's extensive or excessive stress or something. And then all the kind of the symptoms. And I was like, yeah, okay. No, that explains it so much, and so anybody listening, look that up. It was actually a really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you there's a lot of people going through that, not realizing, what's going on. But
yeah. And for people that want, the link, we'll be posting the show notes this week, probably this evening. So which would be Tuesday night, so that'll be the 29th, because my wife is out of town, so I got all kinds of time to do all kinds of stuff. But we'll also put the links to the news articles we're going to talk about today. So and maybe next week we'll talk about burnout. Let's tackle that one. So I think a lot of security people, I've talked to a number of veterans in our industry who have been doing this for a long time, and they've either fought burnout or they actually burned out.
Right. And it's interesting because, like I said, I always thought of it as solely like a work thing, where I've felt burnt out at work. Like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. And it never even occurred to me that it would be just in general.
Right.
It was pretty eye-opening.
Well, yeah, man. And I think, and then we'll move on, because I think knowing you like I do, all the stuff, that you've gone through at home over the last, 6-9 months, including stuff not even in your home, but in your family. And then you've got, COVID, and I'm dealing with all that crap. And oh my God, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend who's been watching you go through it, I get it.
It's been a long, 15, 16 months, but we're getting out of it.
That's right. Here we are, man. Still alive. New day. All right. So Microsoft has been in the news quite a bit they're always in the news because they're Microsoft, and they're big, and they're the king and the queen and the court, and they're Microsoft. So, but there were some newsworthy things over the last, week that sort of stuck out for me. One of them was the malware in pirated games. Well, that's really not all that surprising, because if you're pirating, if you're using anything pirated, you should expect, some malware. But there was one story in particular that caught my attention. And then Nobelium is still around. That's those are the same attackers that
Yeah, going after customer service
SolarWinds.
accounts.
Yep. So we've got a few, what have I got? 3 news articles, kind of getting different angles on, that. And then Microsoft, actually 4 news articles on that. And then Microsoft signing a rootkit.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's not much you can do to protect yourself when Microsoft itself signs the driver. Unless you're sort of paying attention and you see, the communications happening, from your computer or egress, you would never see those command and control IP addresses come up. So I've got 2 articles there. And then the last one I've got, around Microsoft is the Microsoft Edge bug. Never been a big fan of Microsoft's browser. So the fact that you stick Edge on, my PC.
Yeah.
But there's a bug that lets hackers steal everything, basically.
And did you see the one for LinkedIn? 700 million LinkedIn users.
I did see that one. Yeah. I don't know, man. You got to wonder if people are getting like breach. I don't know, just breach numb. It's just like, whatever. I don't care. Go ahead and steal it. And then you have that victim sort of attitude. And then I've got 3 more things that we can talk about if we get there quick enough. One, and we'll talk about this one actually first. I want to talk about John McAfee real quick because he was such an iconic figure for so many years in our industry. $1 billion lost by people over the age of 60 through online fraud in 2020, says the FBI last week. And then this one always caught my eye. It's critical CISO initiatives for the second half of 2021, because I always like to hear what people think CISOs should be working on in the second half of 2021. Because I'm guessing most CISOs probably have the second half already planned and probably had it planned.
I can say that my experience with our customers and working as a vCISO, that this is, unless something were to like pop up unexpectedly, they already know what the focus is.
Yeah. Well, yesterday I was on a round table, and it's a bunch of CIOs, and they were talking about their challenges and their digital transformation and what else? The big buzzwords, and I was on this round table. It was a private round table, so there wasn't like an audience.
Mm.
And I was the only security guy there, and I was like, do you think maybe, because we use these same buzzwords, not really the same buzzwords. They're new buzzwords, but it's for the same crap that we were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago. And we just kind of regurgitate the same thing over and over and over again. Digital transformation, you got to speak the business language. And it's like, do you think we just keep coming up with these new words and angles because we suck at our jobs?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe not suck from a, talent standpoint, but suck from a communication standpoint. I could definitely see that.
Well, in, having the perspective of a CEO and a security guy, I guess it's, I don't take that for granted, because what I don't want on my management team is yes men or yes women, people that just tell me yes, yes, yes. And so I was thinking, from other CEOs' perspectives, when the CFO says you can't afford something, you can't do something, you listen, because we can't do it, right? We don't have the money.
Right.
And so, but a CIO, how often does a CIO, I know it happens, but I don't think it happens often enough where the CIO doesn't assert that same sort of authority. And maybe, with the CEO, we're like, no, we can't adopt any more technology. We can't even manage the stuff we have today.
Right. Well, because it'd be like, it comes across as I can't do my job.
Right.
Right. What CFO says, we can't afford that. Well, why not? Nobody would question, you don't hear that. It's a good point.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. New malware. So pirated, we'll go through this one real quick. New malware and pirated games disables Windows updates in Defender. This is from HackRead. Krakenosh is the malware. It's been around since 2018, so it's not really all that much news, but Avast did some, I guess, additional research. Well, actually, there was some additional research that was done. And Krakenosh actually is a word, or it actually means something. It means mountain spirit in Czech folklore. There's a trivia thing for you.
That's interesting. Yeah, because this was the net filter driver, right? Where is that?
No, this one is different. This one's
that's a different. Oh, that's a different one where they've signed it.
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
realize.
this one's $2 million in crypto. This one mines cryptocurrency.
Oh yeah, no, the one that I was thinking of, because we didn't really talk about this ahead of time, but NetFilter rootkit talks to Chinese C2 IPs and spoofs gamers' geolocations to cheat system and play from anywhere.
Yep, that one's coming next.
Yeah. Okay. Too many to keep.
I know. That's what I'm telling you.
Wait, what?
That's why Microsoft caught my attention this week. I'm like, really? And then I did the same thing you did. I'm like, okay, is this one the same as this one, or is this a different one? But yeah, this one mines cryptocurrency. And it's been around for a while, but it's in pirated games. So the game has to be pirated for this one I'm talking about
Okay.
now. The other one, it's legitimate like software. It's not pirated.
Yeah, that's what that's why I was thinking you were going with that one. Wow.
Yeah, so Krakenosh, don't use pirated software as the end of the day. That's the right thing to do, is to pay for your software. Somebody spent a lot of time and effort to put it together.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Good. I hadn't heard of that one. There's so much going on. It's crazy.
I know. And I've been talking to a lot of CISOs, at states and things. And it actually was a theme yesterday too in the roundtable is it is overwhelming, right? You put CISOs so often, I don't think people realize, the position that they're put in. It's really an unwinnable position. If you've defined win as, what's the most common thing, not most common, but a very common thing is the CEO says, just keep us out of the news. Well, I can't.
I mean,
that's the truth. I can't keep you out of the news.
And I think it's interesting because, when we're working with people, like I've had customers go, hey, have you heard of this? I'm like, wait, how did I miss that? But you look at it and there's just so much, fire hose coming. It's like, yeah, you can't possibly stay on top of everything. Things are going to like this one. I had not heard of this. I was thinking you were talking about the other, it's like, oh.
Well, and that's the thing that I think in our industry too is, being, because you see it happen all the time where, somebody will ask, well, did you see this? And you say, yes, when actually you didn't. And you may have thought you did, but you didn't. But I think what happens so often is we feel uncomfortable saying we didn't know. Like I was on a call last week with the CISO for New Jersey. And he asked me, have you ever heard of this thing? And I was like, no, never heard of that thing. And he said, oh. So I went and checked it out. I'm like, okay, yeah, I probably should have heard of that thing, but I had never heard of that thing.
Yeah, I had one of mine asked, they found a free open source software that'll compare like Nessus scans one against the other and show and I'd never heard of it. I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Like,
yeah, share that with me.
Yeah. Like it's fantastic though that, but I think that's what makes us good is that ability to say, no, I haven't heard of that. and then go and learn about it, right? It's not, there's not, I think a lot of that comes from like maybe some arrogance or something along those lines where people are like, well, I can't admit I don't know something.
Right.
You can't.
Especially as a consultant, right? You're the expert. And that's one of the things I think on the other side too is, when a CEO or, somebody not in our industry asks you, have you ever heard of this thing or heard of that thing? And you say no, sometimes they think, well, I thought you were the expert. I'm like, I am, but there's 30 billion different, strains of malware.
Oh my gosh, I'll send you one of our CSMs was asking for some help in that. We were on a call and they were just talking about all this different technology and I understood it, and afterwards they're like, can we have a call? I have no idea what just happened. And so I found this graphic that shows the InfoSec IT landscape, and they're like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. But
it is totally the problem too, because and it's getting worse, and I keep preaching, especially the last few weeks, we're adopting technology faster than our ability to secure it.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, there's a critical mass where this is going to come crumbling down, and it is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you just see it happening, right?
Yeah.
You look at CISOs today. I was talking with the CISO from Hawaii, Vince, on Friday. All of them, man, they're put in this position. My heart has gone out to them since I've started working with them more. I have so much more respect for what they do. Because I thought, oh, state employee. Yeah. Okay. Tough job.
No.
Yeah. 9 to 5, got to check out. I mean, these guys are put in an impossible position because they're asked to do the impossible and they're not empowered to do it anyway.
Right. And, I've worked with a bunch of, let's see, I'm going to send you this real quick. And it's crazy. It's same with K through 12, same with, higher ed. These guys, we've talked with them and they're not, it's tough, and I think the way I look at it with not when I get shown something that I hadn't heard or somebody shares, especially from a consultant perspective, it's like, oh, cool. Well, this is the benefit you're getting is that, working with us, you think you're the only one telling me something that I hadn't seen. Well, now I've known, and what am I going to do? Share it with others because it's going to make things better, right? So that there is, a benefit to that, and not being, like, oh yeah, I know about that.
Right.
Being open to learning.
Totally, man. And and also, I think to help with the burnout thing, so we talked about that already a little bit today too, is recognize what your job actually is, right? It's not risk elimination. Your job isn't you're not paid to know everything.
Right.
You're paid to know, certainly the fundamentals, certainly the basics. But man, things are going to happen, right? If it's risk management, which is, it can't be risk. Well, I guess it could be risk ignorance, which is like, I don't know, whatever, you just don't care and you just don't do the basics. Or there's risk management or there's risk elimination. Well, risk elimination is not possible. Risk ignorance, you should get thrown in jail for that.
Yeah.
And then there's risk management. That's our job. Don't stress it.
Yeah. It's always fun when working with somebody or talking with someone when they're, considering working with us, kind of this, okay, what exactly is a VC? So what does that mean? And we get that a lot because, well, I mean, honestly, there's a million different companies doing it. Everyone's doing it differently, but to come in and say, look, here's our approach. It's our job in security to alert the business to the risks, provide options, and then implement what the business decides. It's not our job to make that decision. It's our job to present options. Okay, you can do that, but consider these things. Okay, you're good with it. Let's implement this solution. And
Yeah.
so many, a lot of them are IT people that are, and it's the same with IT, right? I mean, from that perspective, we're custodians,
Mhm.
and they're like, you can see the light bulb go off, and they're like, oh, wait, you mean I shouldn't be there? No, you shouldn't be determining what the backup schedule is. You shouldn't be determining. You should be saying, what do you need from us, and then implementing it from there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it once once you realize that, and then even more when you find a company that buys in, oh my gosh, it's such a huge difference.
Totally, man. Totally. All right. So this Krakenosh malware, pirated games, lots of different countries, for everything from Italy, India, Spain, United States, UK. That's where the victims are all getting. Well, it's, and a lot of times you don't even recognize when you've got a crypto miner on your system. It's just a performance issue usually. The scary thing about this one is it actually disables Windows updates and disables Defender. So that gets a little scarier, right? Because those are things that you had in place for protection. The pirated versions of these games are known to be, I think, infected. Far Cry 5, NBA 2K19, The Sims 4, Call of, however that say that word, Cthulhu. We have a few, Fallout 4.
What's crazy is,
yeah,
I'm looking at, I just pulled up Steam, like Fallout 4, it's $12 right now.
I know.
Like, is it really worth pirating and doing this when, I get people maybe don't have a lot of money, but it's not worth it.
Well, if you don't have a lot of money, maybe you shouldn't be playing games either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you can't afford the $12 to play the game. Maybe you shouldn't be playing the game.
It's tough.
You should be working and, or something else.
Yeah.
There's always different circumstances. But The Sims, 4 Seasons, Grand Theft Auto 5, Euro Truck Simulator 2, Jurassic World Evolution, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2018 are all known. The pirated versions, anyway, not the paid for ones.
Yeah.
Deletes the registry entries, turn off automatic updates, evades Windows Defender, other malware. Some of the antivirus solutions that are disabled by the Krakenosh include Scan, Panda, Norton, Adaware, FRSecure, Kaspersky, Bitdefender, and McAfee scanner only.
Yeah, not good. Not worth the risk.
Nope. And really, you should sort of expect this with any piece of pirated software, because here's the deal about pirated software: it's compromised software.
Right.
It's trivial for an attacker to insert malware and get the program to do any kinds of, any number of things.
Well, and right, exactly. And especially people that maybe aren't savvy, right? Because, it's tough. Just don't pirate stuff. It's not worth it.
And even if I was savvy, I would never, ever run those types of things on anything but a sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
In a lab. I mean, why would I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would, even if I confirmed on the lab system that, there's nothing malicious here, I still wouldn't put it on my, my work normal computer systems.
No. Yeah, I mean, even like when totally legitimate, like doing capture the flag or those things, those happen in a virtual environment, because you don't know what's going to be dropped in there. I was doing one the other day, and it's like, what software or what malware did the attacker deliver? So I was looking into it. Oh yeah, no, they had Emotet as part of the capture the flag. I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm in Cali in a sandbox, but you just don't know what's going to happen.
No, that's very true. Yeah, and you reduce your risk. So going back to that risk management versus risk elimination thing, even in a sandbox, yes, it is possible to jump the sandbox, but I mean, come on,
Yeah.
It's rare, and it's a risk management thing. So if you wanted to really do it, I mean, you could just do a dedicated machine even on its own network, totally isolated physically and logically. But man, that's a hell of a lot of work.
So yeah, I may have done that over the last couple of weeks as a mental health break is build out exactly that. But
That's how we cope, brother. All right, so the next one is Nobelium. It's all over the news. This is big news, sort of. I mean, it is big news. Nobelium hackers accessed Microsoft customer support tools. So the Nobelium is from the SolarWinds, the original SolarWinds attack. It's a Russian attack group that goes by a whole bunch of other, not a whole bunch, but a few other names. Goes by Dark Halo. UNC2452 is the common name. Dark Halo, Nobelium, Silverfish, Stellar Article. The two, I think, operations most known for obviously is the FireEye compromise and the SolarWinds, supply chain attack. Tool set, malware, Sunburst, Teardrop, Supernova, Web Shell, Comic Gale, PowerShell tool, and Cobalt Strike are all known tools for this group. Sophisticated stuff.
What's crazy, so they said in this one, it actually got, Microsoft's own stuff. And they said they could see billing contact info, what services they paid for, and some other stuff. And then they turned around and used that as a targeted attack. And honestly, I mean, I think what this shows, regardless of the malware stuff with Microsoft, whatever, I mean, you don't think Microsoft has a ton of controls in place and it still happens? I mean, you cannot prevent this from happening if, in this case, it's not officially a nation state, but let's be honest, it's a nation state attacker. When you have somebody at that level, they're going to get in if they want, right? So what do you have in place to detect? What do you have in place to mitigate and limit what they can do?
Yeah, and you're so limited in your options. It's one of the reasons, I don't like, the fact that we are sort of forced to use Microsoft because you have really no alternative. And, you start putting all your eggs in one basket, right? If I've got everything in Azure and I'm using Office 365 and obviously my Windows, desktop, and man, there's, it's kind of dangerous, so maybe, I don't know.
The problem
anything can be attacked.
Well, the problem is that, first of all, Microsoft made it really easy to install and run a computer, right? Like,
right.
I like Linux, it's great, but it was a nightmare getting drivers working and fixing this stuff. And if you're not technically savvy, nobody's going to sit and try and monkey with this stuff and figure it out and do command line and all this stuff. And that's the problem. We don't have a easy alternative. Yes, there's easy versions out there, but it's not plug and play, as it were, with Microsoft.
Yeah, I think your best, probably easiest plug and play might be, Macintosh, might be an Apple.
Yeah.
That ecosystem, because that is fairly easy to use. And I know I have friends that, they've completely gone that way.
Yeah, I think, but then you're looking at a price, issue. It's not cheap.
Right.
So yeah, it's tough. We're in a tough spot with that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it sort of ticks me off because, I mean, Microsoft tries to do everything for everybody. And so even in their own ecosystem, I have integration issues with, I'm in two different domains, right? Because I'm in FRSecure and Security Studio, and dealing with the authentication issues, through OneDrive, it's the biggest pain in the ass.
Right.
They can't even get their own stuff to talk to each other. You can't even keep Excel from crashing on me, 2-3 times a week. And you want me to put all my stuff? No, it's irritating. And truly Microsoft, don't lose track of the motivation, because it makes everything else sort of make sense. So the motivation for Microsoft is not to protect your data. The motivation for Microsoft is to make as much money as possible.
Mhm.
That's
I
the
mean,
reason they exist.
right.
In that they're going to say things like, well, we take the security of your data seriously, and obviously, right? Because if they didn't, you'd lose trust and they'd lose customers.
Right.
But here,
It's almost like,
yeah,
it's almost like they've gotten so big and so diverse. It isn't one company anymore. It's all these different companies, and then that's when you start having these misses, right? So
and expect more of them.
yeah, it's not going to slow down.
Nope. So in this particular attack, what was happening is, the way the attackers essentially were pivoting into other things is password sprays and brute force attacks. Now, password sprays and brute force attacks are really noisy,
Hmm.
pretty easy to detect if you're, watching. But that's how they were getting into these unauthorized accounts and essentially guessing passwords, right? Another reason to have multi-factor authentication as a default.
Yeah.
All the activity was targeted towards specific customers, primarily IT companies, so 57%. Now, why would you think that they would go after IT companies?
Well, I mean, it's a no-brainer, because who do you think is going to be installed across the largest base? Either support-wise or software-wise.
Exactly.
Yeah,
People trust us. We're not an IT company; we're a security company. But if you're an MSP or an MSSP, you whitelist my stuff because I'm testing for you. I'm doing pen testing. I'm doing whatever the hell I'm doing. And
I gotta say, I'm not gonna say who it is, but we work with a MSP, and I remember talking to them, when they first were considering it, and I really like their approach. And they just signed up for they're doing 2 pen tests, one on themselves. Hey, can you get in? And then if you were to get into the corporate, could you get to customer? And then they're standing up a dummy customer account and managing it exactly like they would any other, and saying, okay, if you got in here, what could you do? Could you get back? Could you get to other people? And I mean, how many do you think do that? This is the first that I've seen
right.
That's done that, and it's phenomenal. I love seeing that.
Yeah, no, and that's the right way to do it, right? I mean, there's an extra burden, I think, too, with an IT company or a consulting company. It's even another step removed from whose data it actually belongs to, right? It belongs to, an individual somewhere who will suffer if that data is lost or stolen. They, share that information with, say a hospital or a retailer or whatever. And then there you got the MSP, and then you've got us, I mean, it's just like these additional layers. But at the end of the day, it's, somebody suffers when this stuff goes wrong. So you should take it seriously.
Yeah.
Unless you like people suffering and then you're a tyrant and we should send you to Iran. All right. So 57% of the companies are IT, 20% government. And don't think for a second that states aren't targeted here. Also, it's not just federal government. It's also states and counties are also part of this. I've seen it myself in some of my own research that I haven't shared with anybody, but I do a lot of that stuff. I don't share certain things, but largely focused on US interests. So 45%, followed by 10% in the UK, smaller numbers for Germany and Canada. In all, 36 countries were targeted. So this is not a small effort. It shouldn't be something that's just brushed aside as like, whatever, it's Microsoft. No, it's Microsoft. And then, right? It's the way attackers have always worked from day one. You identify that vulnerability, get a foothold, elevate your privileges, delete logs, plant the back door, pivot until you hit something.
Right.
That part's not anything new. So anyway, so there's a bunch of news articles about that. If you just Google Nobelium, it's Nobelium, and Microsoft together, you'll see all kinds of interesting
bad times.
And I would suggest, for readers to read more than one article, right? Having those different perspectives on, news things
Oh yeah.
is always good. Because believe it or not, news people have motives also. Like the one from Bank Info Security. I like this one. It's and the title is Group Behind SolarWinds Attack Targeted Microsoft Customers. This is a good one because I like some of the information. The Biden administration has accused Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, or SVR, of conducting the SolarWinds supply chain compromise. Then there's just other that's a different angle that you didn't see in the other articles about, what does this mean geopolitically? And it's interesting how this is all going to play out.
Yeah.
CISA's involved, but don't expect. That's another thing that's kind of irritating me lately is you hear a lot of people saying, well, the government's doing this, the government's doing that. The truth is, number one, the government can't protect you.
No.
This isn't like a normal war or battle where, we protect our shores, protect our skies. No, they're already in our shores. They're already in this country. They can't protect you. You have to take it upon yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, are they going to do something? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean they're going to be able to stop Russia from targeting your company. It's just not possible.
It's 100% not possible. Exactly. Because in that same, Bank Info Security, article, they talk about CISA's involvement. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah, they'll do what they can to help, but they are in over their heads too right now because, they have an executive order that they have to comply with. That's going to require about 400 or 500 at least, I would think, new employees.
And where are they going to find them?
They got to come from somewhere, man. You don't just like,
here
they are.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Big time, man. Big time. And I know that across the country, at least, and I haven't followed all of them, but I know at least 2 former state CISOs have joined CISA as part of that, state outreach thing that they're doing.
Okay.
So that's kind of weird because, yeah, that must be a pretty alluring position or something to be pulling, position.
Honestly, if you think about it, that there's long-term career-wise, I mean, there's some prestige at those upper levels to say, hey, I did this, I was at CISA and did these things. Do they stay for a couple of years and then go to public sector where they're gonna, it'll be interesting to see how, like I said, it's really going to be interesting to see how these play out.
It is. And you mentioned, prestige too, because I've been asked, people, want to aspire to be a CISO. And, I always ask why, they come up with some reason, but I'm not sure they truly thought it all out, on why they want to be a CISO. And if it's prestige, I get that, but I don't think it's worth it sometimes. If you can be a consultant and, not have to be in the grind all the time. You're still in the grind, but it's not like in the grind. You're in a bunch of grinds.
It's what I tell people when they ask why, why are you in consulting now? You don't have your own shop anymore. And that's one of the big challenges is when you move over, you don't own it anymore. I was like, yeah, it's once you kind of process that, it's fantastic because I get to come in and say, hey, here's all the things you need to be doing. Go do them. I can't do those things for you. I can just tell you what needs to be done. And,
right.
It's.
Well, and honestly, so many times you feel so, you seem, and I'm going to say seem so smart too, because they're like, oh, how did you know that? Well, one of the things people don't know about good consultants is we steal everybody's ideas all the time.
Oh, that's
we see something over here like, damn, that's really cool. I like that. Oh, that's really cool too. And then You have so many different tools in your repertoire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if you do it correctly, that's what makes us so valuable,
Mhm.
and that's what a lot of people pay for, is the fact that we do have that much exposure to everything else going on, that they don't see, you know, all
Very
these
true.
other things that we do.
Very true. One last thing about the Microsoft SolarWinds Nobelium latest news thing is the attacks are highly targeted. So there is a purpose behind it. These aren't automated attacks. They're highly targeted, small number of affected customers, but it's the spread, man, that I think people should be concerned about. The next thing about Microsoft, because here we are, it's Microsoft bleeping computer. That's where this article comes from. Microsoft admits to signing rootkit malware in supply chain fiasco. So that doesn't help matters when your job is to verify and validate that the software does what it says it's going to do and it doesn't violate the rules. So you do that and then you sign it, right? With your
You know,
certificate saying this is a true, safe thing, and it ain't.
yeah, I'll be honest, on this one, I do feel for them, in that, if you look at the sheer volume of drivers and stuff, and I mean, we've seen it where how good these attackers are at hiding it. I'm not
I
absolving them.
don't, yeah, I don't feel for them at all, because like you keep taking on all this stuff. I mean, you keep going after this new thing and new thing and new thing. And it's like, why
Yeah,
doesn't somebody else take care of this? You know, this,
yeah, yeah. I'm not absolving them by any means,
true.
but it's like, having seen how difficult this is, I do feel for them, in that these attackers and some of the methods are like, holy crap,
Right.
and the fact that this isn't more common, even, and not just Microsoft, but, Google and Apple, is pretty amazing.
Well, the way things work too, though, is maybe it is more common. And this is
Yeah,
the first one we've sort of found. I mean,
yeah,
because it's always that obvious stuff. It's always like, yeah, duh, why didn't I check that? I don't know. So the driver is called NetFilter, and it was observed communicating with Chinese command and control IP addresses. It's a driver distributed with gaming environment, so not to be confused with what we talked about earlier. But this is legitimate signed software. So
yeah,
G-Data malware analyst Karsten Hahn first took notice of the event, and then sort of, hey, this thing's happening. You might want to do something about it. What does the net filter do? Because originally it was flagged. It appeared to be a false positive, but it's not.
yeah. It was, what did it say? It basically connected to an IP address in China.
Multiple, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if you look at the signature in the version that he shared, it was signed May 16th, 2021. So it's not like this is old stuff
right.
either. There wasn't a patch for it. And since Windows Vista, any code that runs in kernel mode has to be tested and signed before public release. Yeah, you can't install them without the Microsoft certificate. So there is that much like trust put in to the signing process. And then there's a whole bunch of technical details. It's nice that they're shared. IOCs are shared and detailed in a blog post from the Bleeping Computer news article. So, check your own environments for these things.
Yeah. What was interesting is basically the whole point of this was to spoof geolocations to cheat at gaming.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest, that could be, I mean, proof of concept wise, that's not ideal.
Right. Yeah. That is true. It's used to circumvent region-based restrictions in games and snoop on players. Well, that's what it's being used for now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, China. But we can trust them. Don't worry about it. All right, moving on to the last Microsoft thing I have is Microsoft Edge bug. Yeah, could let attackers steal all. So this is the Hacker News is where this comes from. Microsoft Edge bug could have let hackers steal your secrets for any site. This has been patched, I believe, but it's interesting news that if you don't keep up with patches, which is a bad thing, you shouldn't be using computers if you don't patch. Just saying. You shouldn't be driving a car unless you change the oil. Just saying. What's that?
I said it's really interesting how, yeah.
What?
Like how it was exploited is nuts. Like you trigger the attack by adding a comment to a YouTube video written in a language other than English, along with the cross-site scripting payload. Like,
right.
Like I said, who thinks of this?
Well, you know what? You know how it happens most of the time, man. It's somebody stumbles on it.
Right. Very true.
You know, you're browsing the internet, and it's like, oh, what the hell is that?
I mean, we've seen it, right? Like,
oh yeah.
You know,
I've definitely broken more things over the course of my career than fixed things, and it's the broken things where you find these things.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
And that's why I think, you know, hackers. ADD is it's a superpower because we can do that. We can just break things and still be fine and move on to the next thing, forget about that other thing, and like, oh crap, what is that? You know, and then you go down that damn hole. That's what happened right now with me in States. Now it's like, okay, where does this go? Because your ADD then turns into like ultra focus.
Right. Yeah. Rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. It's nuts, man. All right, two last news articles, and then we'll wrap this thing up. But a whole bunch of Microsoft stuff. If you just, like I said, the show notes will be posted. It's evanfrancine.com. Easy to find the show notes. They'll be posted tonight if you want to review any of those news articles we just talked about. But you know, stay abreast of these things. You know, don't try to learn everything, but
yeah,
you know, try to pay attention. I think one of the big things about, you know, that makes good security people good is situational awareness. And that's situational, like know everythingness, but situational awareness, like understanding where you're at, what you're doing, what's around you.
Well, yeah, know your technology, know your software, and pay attention to the alerts of those things. What do you have? Be aware of it.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. One more or two more, actually, real quick. We'll get through. Hot for Security, powered by Bitdefender. That's where this one comes from. $1 billion lost to over 60s through online fraud in 2020, says FBI. I'm actually putting together a class for women's cyber jiu-jitsu in Jacksonville. And it's for mostly people that want to, you know, transitioning from IT into security, right? Ladies that want to do that. So I'm putting a hack yourself course together where hack your own home network, you know?
Yeah.
And what I'd like people to do is to hack your home network and then go find mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, and go hack their network too, so that you can find where their vulnerabilities are and help them. Right? Trying to teach a 60-year-old to become a hacker is probably not going to happen. They're going to find ways, you know, because it's a different generation. It's not an intelligence thing. You know, they didn't grow up with technology. It came so late in the game for them.
Well, you know, you mentioned that we had one. Well, you know, I'll tell you later. But I got put in touch with the women in cybersecurity at Texas A&M. They're trying to put together a K through 12 program and understand more about it. So I'm going to be working with them to kind of help,
Nice.
which I'm super excited about. But it's kind of along those lines, like, let's get this early and do it right and prevent this from happening for future generations.
For sure. And the thing is about security is security, right? The concepts are the same at home as they are in the office. And they're the same in the office as they are in protecting the nation, right? It's start with an asset inventory. I can't possibly protect the things I don't know I have. Start with understanding that you're the one responsible for your own security. It's not my responsibility. It's nobody else's. It's yours. It's not the ISP's responsibility. It's not the places you visit on the online. It's your responsibility. You know what I mean? It's starting with those basic things. So, run in, we did it on the show once, right? Run Nmap on your network, see what you got running, take inventory of it, try to identify it, try to figure out who it's communicating with. Just, lots of stuff. But there's some good information in this article in particular. I thought what was interesting to me was the crime types. There's really good data here. So confidence, fraud, romance is the number one loss type at $281 million for over 60s.
Which I would be willing to bet if you looked at, back in the day, as it were, that would not be any difference than, targeting older that may be lonely.
Absolutely. And one thing I thought was interesting too is ransomware is like number 28, 5. I mean, it's way down there.
Well,
it's at 5 million. So the over 60s aren't getting hit by ransomware. The over 60s are getting hit by, romance scams, business email compromise, tech support scams, those types of things.
Well, it makes sense though, right? Like,
it does.
Know your target, know your audience. And, it sounds callous to say that, but it's the reality, right? Why would they ransom, a 70-year-old's computer who's going to just not know what to do and isn't going to pay Bitcoin and try and figure that out, as opposed to, socially engineering them and getting money that it's going to be a lot easier, and this is what attackers do.
And that's, it's always the saying, right? It's easier to go through it's easier to go through your admin. It's easier to go through your secretary than it is to go through your firewall.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why would I go through all the work of creating, custom malware for attack on, grandma when I can just pick up the phone?
Yeah.
It's 30 seconds versus, I don't know how many hours I would spend crafting another attack. But all right, so there's that. And then last one before we close this sucker up, I was going to talk about the critical CISO initiatives, but I thought it was I was going to make fun of it more than anything else. So I'll just
yeah, you and me both.
Yeah. So I'll just let that go maybe. And next week, let's do that. Let's talk about burnout. I think that's a good thing. And we'll cover, a few news articles. The last one is, if you didn't hear, John McAfee is dead. He allegedly took his own life. We could do a whole episode on that.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Knowing him, he's gonna turn up in like 5 years somewhere.
Well, not just that, but if you remember back in the day, he was a pioneer in our industry, regardless of the kind of person you think he is. He was a pioneer in our industry in the earlier days. And he had access to the highest echelons of the US government. And so you see the things that have happened, I don't know, man, I'm always skeptical when somebody turns up dead in a prison when you have guards and cameras and things that are supposed to be making sure you don't take your life. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know he knows things. I mean, come on, he has to.
Yeah. Interesting. And that's one of those things that we'll never probably ever know the truth or know all the stuff about.
Right. So anyway, we can speculate about that. But yeah, I wasn't a big McAfee fan because, you know, I'm not a big fan of kind of anybody like that, but it is sad, you know, when you see, you know, what was in, you know, a tech giant, you know, who
Yeah.
was part of the revolution, really.
Yeah.
Sucks to see him go. And he was entertaining too.
He was a very interesting character.
Yeah, totally. So goodbye to John McAfee. Yeah, sort of sucks. All right. Any shout outs this week, sir?
I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for the support over the last couple of weeks, and just, you know, knowing that you got my back is great. I'll give Oscar a shout out for the same thing. Well, have the whole leadership team, man. It's just been amazing to see everybody be so supportive. It's really been helpful.
Oh, cool, man. Well, and we do genuinely love you, man. I mean, some people just use those words, but you know, it comes from the heart, you know.
Yeah, it's always funny. People always are like, no, your company can't really be. No, it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Everybody here in leadership has been in that position and is dedicated to not letting that happen. And they truly care about each other. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it is cool, man. It is cool. Who am I going to give a shout out? I'll give a shout out to my dog. It's weird, but Violet is, especially when my wife is gone, you know, she's out of town this week. Violet's like my pal. She's just been hanging out with me. She yells at me. I yell back at her. We're just loving life.
It's funny how, when Katie takes the kids out of town, the dogs are like, oh yeah, good.
Yeah.
Like,
I told Marlis that Violet's sleeping in the bed with me now. And she's like, what? Is she replacing me? I'm like, well, you're not here.
she doesn't talk back as much. No, wait, no, can't say that.
Right? Yeah. She's easier to tie up.
If I get annoyed, I can just throw her in the backyard.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably get you in trouble. We'll have to have Brandon edit that part out so our wives don't hear it.
Nah, that's fine.
They know we're joking.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the conversation, man. It's good to see you. It's good to see that we can share some laughs together. You know, laughter is a good medicine, and we'll continue to pull for each other. You know, good things are ahead. There's sunlight on the other side of this thing. For people, listeners, if you want to tell us something, give us feedback, or you know, have an opinion to share, which we won't read those, but if you want to share them, feel free. Unsecurity@protonmail.com. If you're the social type, you can socialize with us on Twitter. I'm at Evan Francine. Brad's at Brad and I. Both Brad and I know Brad's not much of a social media user in general, and I've been swamped. So if you social us there, we might get to it. And there's other social media stuff. We're easy to find, right? Whether it be the Unsecurity Podcast or FRSecure or Security Studio, any of that kind of stuff. But that's it. We'll talk to you again next week. Enjoy. Be safe.